Paul here from My Perfect Failure, helping you turn your failures into successes and your setbacks into opportunities. So what do you do when your entire job is spent navigating high-risk environments? And one wrong choice could expose your entire team or derail a critical mission. My guest today, Jeffrey Sanow, a seasoned CIA intelligence officer who spent years working on global security operations, training elite teams, and mastering risk management from the Middle East to North Africa. Jeffrey shares the CIA's surprising philosophy on embracing failure, why it's a non-negotiable part of trying hard enough, and the fundamental lessons in leadership he's learned while being out in the field. He details how his time in the Peace Corps set the foundations for his entire career. This episode provides an incredible look behind the curtain at what it truly takes to thrive when the stakes are at their absolute highest. So stick around, because the secrets to high stakes resilience starts now. So hit play wherever you get your podcasts.
Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today, I'm super excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a veteran CIA intelligence officer and security expert who has spent years navigating high-risk environments and making critical decisions under pressure. From working on global security operations and training elite teams in leadership and risk management. Beyond intelligence and strategy, he's a master communicator who understands the power of human communication, even in the most high stakes situations. Today, he's here to share his insights and expertise on resilience, leadership, decision making, and problem solving, and a whole bunch of other areas we'll cover, I'm sure. So a very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Jeffrey Sanow. How are you, Jeffrey?
Well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. I'm excited to have this conversation. I did, I guess, reiterate that before we hit the record button, because I'm speaking to a CIA agent, or I'm not sure if you're formally a CIA agent, but I'm excited to meet you and have a conversation and really tap into, I kind of shrink wrapped your bio there, but there's a wealth of information, insights, experience. There's a whole bunch of expertise and insights I'm keen to glean from you today. So yeah, so excited to meet you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. One minor correction. I'm a CIA officer.
Officer.
The FBI has agents.
Okay.
We have officers.
Okay. You know what? I actually wrote down officer, but I think I've got agent and espionage on my brain. Whenever
Yeah, no, it's a very common mistake.
Because you know what I was thinking before I hit the record button, as it's on my mind, I'll ask it. Like for people like me, lay persons or lay people, who we think of CIA, we think of James Bond, you get all these espionage type movies that we're totally gripped by. So you do think of, agents, covert missions and so forth like that. I was actually thinking about a random scene in, I don't know have you watched Jason Bourne movies, have you?
Yes, and the day I told my sister what I did after I retired, her response was, You mean like Jason Bourne? And I said to her, yes, just like that. They train us to ride motorcycles across rooftops and leap across the streets. And no,
Yeah,
nothing like that at all.
yeah. You know what I was thinking is not particularly that the fast cars and the bikes and stuff. I was thinking, I bet there's one or there's a couple of them when they're in these rooms. You've got these covert operations going on, and you're talking to people, this, that, and the other. That's just for the movies, right?
Well, you can be very active, let me say that, with more than one operation going on at a time.
Okay, okay, all right then.
Well, if
Okay.
you think about it, it's a global enterprise. So it works 7 by 24.
So I guess where a good place to start for me is always at the beginning. So I did some research. I learned a whole bunch of terms and words that I've heard over the years, but I didn't know quite what they meant. But as a youngster, did you envisage that you would get into the career that you've got into, like Peace Corps, then CIA? What was the impetus to get into this field?
Well, to be honest, the impetus to travel overseas came because I had a fairly unhappy childhood. Parents were divorced, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go into details and bore people with that. But at the age of 20, I knew I needed to get as far away from my family as humanly possible in a proper context. So that's when I decided to join the Peace Corps. And it gave me the opportunity to move from Ohio to Tunisia in North Africa, which is about a half a continent away. And so that was a good start. At the end of my 2 years there, I had nothing to look at but going back to Ohio State University. And so I went someplace else with the Peace Corps. I did what's known as extend and transfer. And I transferred to Gabon, which is right on the equator in Africa, and did another year and a half there. And I enjoyed it. I mean, you get a flavor for being in different climates, in different cultures, around different people. And there's no right or wrong, worst or better culture. But there are, even in the U.S. I mean, there are some really great things about America, and there are some things that perhaps could be improved. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah.
And it's that same way every place. So I was able to learn foreign languages. I learned French and Arabic, Arabic in Tunisia, French in Gabon. And then I lived overseas for 3.5 years. So I went back to college in Texas, finished up my degrees, and my first job after I got my Master's of Science degree was at a turkey processing plant in Waco, Texas, killing 23,000 turkeys a day. After my second day there, I was pretty convinced that this was not the job that my mother had envisioned for me. So, I started looking around for new jobs, and after about a year, I came across an ad in the Wall Street Journal weekly job ads that we used to have, that newspaper insert, and one of them was for the CIA. So I applied, went through the whole process.
Okay. So can I track back slightly?
Sure.
Peace Corps, and then I want to get into the whole CIA business. I've written down a load of questions I want to ask about the CIA. But Peace Corps, I'm from the UK. Can you give myself and others who aren't familiar with what the Peace Corps is and what they
Sure.
do, what that entails?
Sure. The Peace Corps was set up by John F. Kennedy and Shriver. I can't remember Shriver's first name, back in the early 1960s. And it was designed to do three things. One, it was designed to export American culture. Second thing, import foreign culture, because when you go live in another country for 2 years, you're going to develop an understanding of that culture and that language and bring that back. And then the third priority was to export American expertise and technology. So at the time, I was working on farm machinery. I grew up on a farm working on equipment. I spent 2 years studying agriculture mechanics. So it is when they say volunteer, yes, I volunteer. I can leave at any time if I'm not happy. That happens. Not everybody's cut out for it for one reason or another. And so we go and we live in a country, and typically at the time I joined, we had a lot of agriculture people, we had a lot of English teachers, and we had a lot of fisheries folks that was teaching people how to do fisheries in the small fish ponds. Nowadays, I think they've gone into a lot of business practices. I think in Eastern Europe, they have a lot of people there doing business practices. But again, it's still volunteer. You are given a stipend to live on. That varies country to country, whether that's comfortable, easy, or hard. And you're assigned a partner in the host country. So I had someone that I worked with specifically in the agriculture mechanics field when I was in Tunisia. And then in Gabon, I actually had a team that I led on agriculture mechanics. So I was demonstrating the skill of how do you take care of farm machinery, how do you take care of equipment, proper maintenance, proper servicing, and things of that nature. How do you adjust it? Agriculture equipment is highly sensitive and it's set so you can adjust it for optimum performance. So you have to teach people how to do that. So that's what I did a lot of as a Peace Corps volunteer. I think my income was maybe like $125 a month when I was living in Tunisia and about the same when I was in Gabon. So again, I'm not getting fat, dumb, and happy. I'm not getting your expatriate paychecks that a vice president for Shell might get going to one of these other countries, but it was enough to live on. And the emphasis is on integrating yourself with the people. I lived in a little village in Tunisia for my first year, and I just actually reconnected with my Arabic instructor because I found him on Facebook, and we've been exchanging pictures, and I can't believe that I look like that when I was 20 years old. Um, so you make these lifelong connections, and I'm still in touch with some of my fellow Peace Corps volunteers that I served with in 1980. So you can do the math on how long ago that was.
Yeah.
So it's about developing a relationship with the local people. Frankly speaking, and honestly speaking, they really didn't care what this 20-year-old boy from Ohio had to say about their farming practices. They've been doing them for hundreds of years and were not the least bit interested in what I had to say. But they tolerated me because I was unique to the village. So that part was good, and I met and talked with and lived with some fascinating people, and it was a great experience for me. I like to think that I represented America well, and so it was a win-win for everybody all the way around.
Yeah, no, it sounds like an amazing opportunity. Not clearly not everybody would take that on because it's kind of daunting as a youngster, 20-year-old to go and live in a different continent. English isn't the primary language, so you're going to have to learn a new language, and then you're going to have to teach people, you're going to have to learn, you know, new foods, new style of dress, new customs. But actually, if you are that way inclined, what an opportunity! How exciting! Is that initiative still alive and kicking today?
Oh yes, Peace Corps is very active.
Okay, okay. And is it for, I guess, youngsters? Is it pre-university or is it post-university or
Typically post-university, but it is not restricted by age in any respect. I mean,
okay?
yeah, I'm a little older now. I could apply to join provided I didn't have any medical issues
Mm,
that would hold me back, which tends to happen when you get older. But yeah, anybody out of college typically, yeah, they'll take them 35, 40, 45, no problem at all.
okay, okay. No, it sounds great. So now I know what the Peace Corps is. I've heard it over the years, but didn't know. I was keen to learn a little bit about that. Okay, so the turkey factory. Obviously your mum was going to let you stay there. She didn't send you to school, get all those qualifications to that turkey factory. So you decided the CIA. What was the process like applying for the CIA even? I can imagine that process being incredibly rigorous.
Yes, sir. Just a quick reflect back. Because of my time in the Peace Corps and the fact that I spoke foreign languages, I've lived overseas, that made it an easy uh, transition to the agency. So
Okay.
that benefited me very much in the application process, plus having a Master's of Science degree. The application process at the time, and I don't think it will have changed a lot, except it's now much more computerized. When I applied, it was all paper driven, but they, as you can imagine, do a very thorough background check. They ask you lots and lots of questions. It's a very serious position. If you're going to get any type of clearance, especially the kind that I had, they have to understand you and know what motivates you. And one of the questions I remember on the initial application was to list the last 5 books that I had read.
Really?
Yes. And the good thing is my now ex-wife and I were both big readers. I read a lot in the Peace Corps. So it was easy for me just to go to my bookshelf and go that. But the idea is, does this person watch TV all the time? Is he studious? Is he a reader? Is he smart? Can he adapt? So that was just one question that still sticks out of my mind. So the application process, as you said, was very thorough. The background investigation is very thorough. They actually showed up at my place of employment and wanted to know, and were interviewing. I think they did a phone interview with my boss. He didn't know I was looking for another job. That was kind of embarrassing, but oh well.
Yeah.
I finessed that. And so they interview family members, they interview neighbors. So they look into every nook and cranny just to make sure that they're not going to be getting a potential pedophile or criminal or substance abuser, things of that nature. They're very thorough in that, and they want someone who has integrity. You have to have a high degree of integrity because they have to believe everything you say. They have to trust you. Trust is one of the biggest factors in being a successful officer, because who knows what happens in the field if I'm the only guy there? Only me. So they have to trust that my reports are going to be accurate and they're not going to be embellished, or I'm not going to leave out important stuff. And I'm sure there's more than one report that I really didn't want to tell them about, but I had to. Well, I did this. Because if not, they will come back to you
Yeah.
in due course.
Okay. Was it intimidating, the idea of applying and then working for the CIA, or was it more curious, more excitement?
Well, very much excitement, very much curiosity, very much excitement. And it was very much a lot of fun. It wasn't intimidating. For whatever reason, I'm not easily
Yeah.
intimidated. Certainly not in my age now. I don't think I was at age 20 or 25 either.
Okay. The question that I haven't asked, but again, similar to Peace Corps, CIA, I know the name, know the word, but in terms of what the CIA is and what they do, could you maybe give us a bit of a snippet in terms of what the CIA
Sure.
stands for?
CIA stands for Central Intelligence Agency, and it's our job. It was my job to steal secrets and recruit spies, and that's what I did. And that's a small part of it. It's a major part of it, I should say. We're a small part of the intelligence community. I think there's 16 intelligence agencies because you've got naval intelligence, Air Force intelligence, all the military guys. But it's our job. We focus on collecting intelligence at the senior government level. The CIA wants to be able to tell the president or the congressman that this country is going to adopt this trade policy, or this country is going to adopt this counterterrorism policy. I'm sure you can understand, since 9/11, counterterrorism has been at the top of the list. So the president wants to be able to call, let's say, the president of Germany and say, hey, we need to make sure that we're doing everything together. What about this or that? What are your people telling you? And so it's that combination of providing intelligence and then the open communication. Now, people are going to get really excited. I forget, I think it was Merkel, that they discovered that the US was listening in on her phone calls. And well, heavens, yes. NSA listens in on everybody's phone calls. And anybody that thinks that we're not collecting intelligence on every country except for 5 is completely wrong. We're going to collect it, even our allies, because our allies don't tell us everything.
Yeah.
I'll pick on the Israelis, and I'm very pro-Israel. But the Israelis are the Mossad is the intelligence service that we love to hate the most because they have their own way of doing business. And I think that you saw the events of some recent history where they managed to detonate, what was it, 3,000 pagers simultaneously?
Yeah. I remember hearing about that.
You think that's an easy operation to run? My goodness. So they do their thing. We collaborate with many intelligence agencies, including Mossad, but that doesn't mean we're not going to also be trying to spy on them. We are. There are the Five Eyes that we do not run operations against. It's the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada.
Okay.
Which we don't want to. I mean, if you think back to World War II, where all of this stuff came from, that makes perfect sense because we were significant, trusted allies in World War II. And so a lot of the treaties and agreements came out of there. One of which was, we will never spy on you and we will share everything with you. So we share almost everything that's relevant. And that's the nature of our business. We're there to provide our policymakers with information of intelligence value. Intelligence value means it is not public information. A congressman can read the newspaper, the London Times, whatever, and learn what he can learn. But that's open source. Well, what they want us to provide is non-open source information. And that's our job.
Okay, so you would have to, I imagine, when I say employ, have certain tools available to you so you're able to find that information which wasn't open source. So you could effectively do your jobs and find or be made aware or cognizant of really important information that was vital to the US and partners.
Yes, and we go through training for that. We go through training on how to, it's a very simple list: spot, assess, develop, recruit, and handle spies.
Okay.
And that's what we do.
I was just thinking around going through that process, and because clearly what you guys were doing within the CIA was, pretty critical, pretty mission critical. So when you were going through maybe an exercise and you were pulling this information together, when you were coming to a conclusion, would you have to be pretty exact, pretty definitive about that information, or definitive about the conclusion of the process? Would you do that on your own, or would you have other people that you could concur with to say, look, if we're working on this, this is what I've found, this is my suggestion?
It is a very tried and tested methodology. They have been training people in that methodology since 1947. So they are very good at it. There is a huge support team that consists of analysts and reports officers and operational officers. I was an operational officer. And, they coordinate to make sure that the questions that I'm given to find answers to are, in fact, the questions that the congressional committee or president's office wants answers to. We don't just go collect intelligence because it's fun.
Okay.
We do it because there's a specific need within the US government for that type of information.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And it's a different question. In the UK, probably could even have a lesson here. MI5, we have the MI5. Would that be an equivalent to what the CIA is?
Yes, and we work closely with MI5. I've actually been in that building.
Okay. I know where that building is, so you might have been in there when I've been walking past. You never know.
I think I got a great picture across the river of the backside of it.
Okay. Reading up on you, you've worked all over the place. You've already alluded to that you, as a youngster, visited Tunisia even learnt to speak Arabic. But your role within the CIA. Where did that take you? What sorts of locations were you working?
Um, I spent 3.5 years in South Asia. I spent 2 years in Southern Europe. I spent 6 years in the Middle East. And then the remainder of my time was various places around the US.
Okay, okay. I guess working in those different locations, the different cultures, different people, was that quite interesting to learn about the different nuances of how somebody in maybe the Middle East would their behavior to maybe people in South Asia or maybe even in Europe or in the States?
What was the question?
Was
Was
that
it interesting? Heavens,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, sort of the nuances and the different themes and the different ways that people would act. Was that something that you enjoyed?
Oh, well, sometimes, some days you enjoy it, some days you endure it. For the
Okay.
most part, I enjoyed it. And it's easy to come away from that kind of experience and make sweeping generalizations. I'll make one now for which I'm going to apologize ahead of time so people don't beat me up. But in South Asia, they're pretty sure that if it needed to be invented, they would have invented it already. And that's their mindset. And they have every reason to feel that way. I don't have an issue with that, but I had to get used to that mindset. The Southern European cultures are old. They've been around for how long? And the same thing in the Middle East. Those cultures have been around for a long time. The Middle East is further confused because of all the oil wealth and what does that translate to, and Islam, and there's lots of conflicts there. And I'm not going to get into being to a religious discussion because those never end well. Um, but I can assure you that in many parts of the Middle East, Islam is an issue. We see in Israel the problems that they have. I say that, and I can say with confidence that I never had a problem. Neither did anyone in my family. Now, we were respectful of those cultures and we did nothing to irritate them. People who did provoke those cultures were not happy at the end of the day. I will give you one example. Most countries in the Middle East have very strict laws on drugs, on illegal drugs. And one young gentleman was flying into the Middle East. And when he went through customs, they discovered he had marijuana on him. He and his entire family were on a plane out of that country the very next day. And I don't know what the legal system is like in the UK. In the US, it takes forever. It drags on and on and on and
Same, we're
on.
the same.
Yeah. So to have a crime, a decision, and an execution of the punishment within 24 hours, I mean, that's
Almost too quick because you can't look into extenuating circumstances, and you know what I mean? It seems,
yeah, they don't care.
yeah, yeah,
The rules, the rules. You bring in drugs, you get kicked out. So, they were very strict in those regards. I can tell you that with a few minor exceptions, my wife and my two daughters were very well treated, both in the Middle East and in South Asia and in Southern Europe. There were no issues that went along with it. There could be, and maybe on occasion they might get a little this, a little that, but by and large, there were no issues, and they did well, and I did well, and we all enjoyed that climate. The other thing that it presented to me was the opportunity to travel.
yeah,
I was able to go to Syria many times. Why do I pick on Syria? Because Damascus is the second most important city in Christianity, right after Jerusalem. So think of all the religious heritage sites. I'm a Christian. Think of all the religious heritage sites in Damascus. There's if you read Acts chapter 9, which is Saul's conversion to Paul on the road to Damascus. It talks about the bishop going to find the man from Tarsus on the street called Straight. The street called Straight still exists. I've walked down it.
Really?
St. Paul's Underground Chapel is there. Fascinating, fascinating. I visit it all the time. There are monasteries north of Damascus that were built by Emperor Justinian I in the year 400. So you're looking at something that's, 1,800 years old, 1,700 years. That's how old some of these monasteries are. And both from a historical standpoint and from a religious standpoint, I found that just fascinating. The other thing that you have in Syria is you have something called the Crac de Chevalier, which is the Hospitaliers fort. That's what it was. The Crusaders, the Crusader fort, built by the Hospitaliers. I think that's how you say it. If not, I apologize. They fed 23,000 people a day in that fort.
20, sorry, say that again.
23,000. That's a 2 and a 3, a comma, and 3 zeros. That's how many people they fed in that fort. And it's on top of a mountain. It's on top of the Bacan Mountains. And just fascinating, fascinating what they did and what they see. And the Crusades, right or wrong, that's not the debate, but they are certainly a significant part of our history. And as the saying goes, if we do not learn history, we are doomed to repeat it. So that's why history holds such fascination for me.
Amazing that you got to live and stay in some of these places. So you're able to, all that stuff you read, you got to absorb it and live it and understand it. And I guess meet people and ask questions.
And if you Google Crac de Chevalier, it is the best maintained Crusader fort.
Really?
Yeah.
So the career in the CIA, obviously there was lots going on. Were you learning things about yourself just in terms of your own? We want to talk a bit about communication, we want to talk about leadership, we want to talk about strategies and how to operationalize different scenarios. Were you learning more about yourself and more about others and different ways to lead and maybe to listen? For a lot of these skills coming to the fore.
It started in the Peace Corps. And it's really tough for a 20-year-old to realize that those people really didn't care what I had to say. I mean, my 20-year-old ego took a real beating. Obviously, I recovered and survived. And I learned that listening is an important skill. So, yes, your skill set continues to develop. Your leadership skill continues to develop as you experience both good leaders and bad leaders. And I will tell you, the agency has good leaders and bad leaders. I worked for some great people. I worked for some not so great people. And I like to think that I became a good leader as a result, both of my experiences and of the training that they provide, because they recognized about the 1970s that they needed to bring in leadership training programs at a variety of levels. And they did. And they have very good training programs to develop those skills, because leadership's not a natural skill, it's a developed skill, and it can be enhanced. So that's what they were very good at.
Okay. So before we hit the record button, we spoke about leadership very briefly. And this program, or this show, My Perfect Failure, really wants to shine a light on the idea that we can succeed after a failure, after a setback, and how to develop that within ourselves, but more importantly, within our teams. And obviously, there can't be any more significant organizations than the CIA that will be making any number of difficult decisions on any given day. And I can't imagine there wouldn't be some difficult moments for leaders. How how did leadership engage failure or setbacks within the CIA?
Because of the very human nature of the work that we did, failure was accepted. It is going to happen. If you don't have the occasional failure, then you're not really trying hard enough. And that was the accepted philosophy, if I can use that term. Now, they have lots of backstopping to prevent failure. There are lots of review panels and review boards and approvals that are necessary to reduce the likelihood of failure. Because sometimes, let's be honest about this, a failed operation has the potential to cost somebody his life. It could be someone that's been recruited to provide information, or it could be the officer himself. Who knows? So they go to great lengths to reduce the likelihood of failure, but they recognize that it can happen, and they put contingencies in place should it happen. And you mentioned communications. That is arguably one of the linchpins of preventing failure, is to make sure that there's good communications. And I can say I always had that. I said I had a team supporting me. And I can use an example where I was leaving a country. Someone had given me a lot of documents as I was literally going out the door. I couldn't carry those documents with me for obvious reasons. So what did I do? I still had my hotel room. So I went into the room, and you go to a lot of these stores and they give you the little plastic bags.
Yeah.
I had some little plastic bags, taking gift bags for my kids and my wife. So I went in there, I got all those bags out. I tore all the pieces of paper into small pieces. I mixed them all together. I put them individually in 4 different bags. And then I went to the elevator on each floor. You get off an elevator, what's right there by the elevator door? An ashtray with a trash can. So I went and I put one in each floor to throw it away in one trash can. I went home. I wrote it up. I said, this is what I did. And the beauty of the organization was they virtually never second guess you. Because again, this goes back to trust and training. And they trusted that I made the best decision that I could make at the time, and I dealt with it in the best way possible. So I never received any question on what I did. I'm not even sure I got an acknowledgement, to be honest with you. I probably did. But that's how you support your people. You train them. And I used to talk to the people when I was a group chief. You empower people to fail. Your people have to be empowered to fail, or they're never going to get their full potential. Because if they're not failing, they're not pushing themselves. So I know I had one experience. I had one of the analysts that was working for me when we were monitoring weapons of mass destruction, and say, we have a shipment of material that left Asia. It's on its way to the Middle East, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it. My response to her was given in oh so kind terms, but it boiled down to, you get an email out to every office along the way, tell them to be on the lookout for it, tell them to stop it, and tell them to notify us. And she went, okay. I said, I'll do anything I can to help you. If someone's not sending an email out like they should, because no email goes directly out, it goes through a lot of steps, you come tell me, I'll go knock on the door and get everything sent out. But we're going to do everything we can to stop that shipment. Just because we may not succeed, completely beside the point. I got to tell my boss upstairs, yeah, we pulled out all the stops. So those were my direct instructions to her. She went off, did her thing. Next morning, she comes into my office and says, Chief, we got it. We turned it around and we sent it back, for which she got an award. So I empowered her to fail. I empowered her to come to me the next day and say, yeah, we didn't get it. Okay. We swing it. The other thing I told her was, we swing at every pitch. If you swing at every pitch, you're going to have a lot of strikes, but you're also going to have a lot of home runs.
Yeah. I love that analogy. I love those analogies, stories, factual stories and analogies, because they're so helpful. Because I know now that you support and train businesses and business leaders. When you started to work with industry, work with leaders and businesses, did you notice? Because I've seen that type of malaise where it's very easy it could be for a number of reasons. Maybe people want an easy life and don't want to maybe extend themselves or do things that are maybe outside their comfort zone, or maybe they might feel they're outside of their skill set zone. And we can easily say, well, that's too difficult. That's not going to happen. And then maybe they don't do it, or that's their reason not to do it. Did you notice that contrast when you went in and you're supporting leaders and businesses that maybe they don't go that extra mile or take that next swing?
Yes. And I think the difference between working for a government agency and working for a private company is that it's really hard to get fired from a government agency. Whereas
Okay.
if it's easy to be fired from a private company.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
employment at will. Having said that, I think the good companies recognize, the good leaders in good companies recognize that they're not going to hit a home run with every pitch. And the good companies that are successful empower their people to fail also. And again, you have to go back and, okay, if I empower this guy to fail and all they do is fail, well, then we have a different discussion we
Yeah,
have to
of
go
course,
have.
of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And so if I empower them to fail and they fail once a quarter, they try 10 new things and one's a failure. Okay, that means 9 were successful. And so it's that balancing act, and it's that empowerment. And that's a word that has become more and more prevalent in business discussions in my lifetime, which is empowerment. It used to be that, the chief was the chief and the underlings were the underlings, and the underlings were not really empowered to say, I'll pick on Chrysler, Mr. Iacocca, I don't think that's going to work. They couldn't really do that. These days, more and more private companies are empowering their people to say, boss, that probably won't work. Here's why. And it's that feedback, the feedback loop that includes criticism, that my generation has learned to accept because
Yeah,
they didn't have a choice. They had to learn to accept it.
yeah. And just around that feedback loop that involved criticism is a skill, the ability to take that feedback loop with criticism, but not take it personally, but take it as, is that a skill set that we can develop as leaders and business people, regardless of where we sit within the spectrum?
Absolutely. And it's part of developing our professional personality. We all have a professional personality. I'm sure I guarantee you, my personality at work was probably a little bit different than my personality at home.
Mm.
You can ask either my now ex-wife or my current wife, and I'm sure they'll tell you the same thing. Yeah, he can be a real wanker at home sometimes.
Yeah,
Okay, that's not what you want to hear at work. That's you just don't. So it's absolutely a skill set we can develop. We can develop our listening skills, something I can only speak to Americans. Americans are terrible listeners because we think we're right all the time because we have a recent history. Let's just go back to World War II, where we were right most of the time. And that became ingrained in my parents' generation and my generation. And then came things like the Vietnam War and some of the other errors of our ways, if I can say, that proved that, hey, maybe you guys ought to shut up and listen. And so that's when developing a listening skill became a training program for businesses to be successful. Because, yes, you have to listen to your employees, you have to listen to your customers.
I find that very interesting. I just want to mention something before I get into that bit. But when you spoke about listening and its importance, I recently heard a quote by Quincy Jones, the music producer, who said that the reason we're given 2 ears and we have one mouth is because we're meant to listen more, a lot more than we talk. But he says most of us, we mix it up and get it round the wrong way round. So yes, you triggered that thought and that quote he mentioned.
Yeah, I heard that quote as well.
Yeah, he would totally concur with you. I'm thinking Quincy Jones would love what you just said. But just around listening and that ability to listen and maybe not over talk, how does that blend with ego sometimes? Because certainly with leaders, sometimes leaders might want to talk maybe more than they listen because they think that maybe my role is to dictate. I should be doing the talking, maybe not the listening. And maybe even as somebody that's more junior, developing those listening skills. Do you coach your clients on how they can maybe be better listeners?
Yes. Um, the skill set for listening is easy to emphasize. And I've had leaders who were not the greatest listeners, but typically those leaders will have a deputy who's a very good listener. And it's in fact his job to listen. It's the chief's job to dictate. Oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do
Okay.
that, you're going to do this. And I've been in more than one meeting where I've raised my hand because I'm stupid and said, "Hey, chief, it doesn't work that way." And then the deputy will get me inside and say, "Jeff, shut up.
Yeah.
Come talk to me afterwards. Shut up right now." And that's okay. I mean, that's how these are vibrant living systems. And so, yes, you can have a leader whose job is to pontificate. He's a great thinker. He's a great planner. He's a great strategist, and he needs to have a great deputy who can listen. And that's a fairly common combination because businesses recognize the importance of listening, but not everybody has that skill.
Yeah, totally. Well, I guess we see that all the time, and I'm sure you've seen it all the time over the years. So I just wanted to ask you about some of the situations that you've possibly encountered, and maybe some other people encounter that possibly aren't in the CIA, but people when we having to make decisions that are quite high risk decisions, that are quite pressurized decisions. Do you have any advice for people that routinely or periodically probably is a better word, periodically there might be situations that arise that for them might feel high pressurized situations but are not very good at making decisions in those moments? I'm imagining that you are having to make high pressured decisions or actions periodically. I'm sure you had skills for those. What advice would you have for people around that?
So there are officers like myself had to be able to make decisions on 80% or less of information because we never have 100% information. So we are out in the field, maybe we're trying to detect surveillance or we're trying to run an operation, and we go through a mental checklist, and that mental checklist comes up, yes, 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 I don't know, I don't know. And you have to say to yourself, do I have enough to make a decision going forward? Because the last thing you want to do is go back to your boss and say, chief, I wasn't able to do it because I didn't like the way it felt. Okay, you get that once, maybe twice. Third time, that chief is going to have a discussion with you or send you for more training or something to that effect. So, yes, you have to be able to make a decision on 80% of information. You have to do the mental checklist, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many. And then you make a decision. Detecting surveillance. Have I had surveillance? I've done my route. No, 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 no. Okay, so I do not believe I have surveillance. Notice we never say we don't have surveillance. We say we didn't detect surveillance because that's the accurate statement.
Okay.
So it's possible I had surveillance, but I didn't detect it. But it's important to say I did not detect surveillance. So, yes, you're making that decision with 80% information before you continue on to the next step of an operation. So, no, I have not detected surveillance, therefore, I will execute the mission. What if you're wrong? Well, things go south. But you have to have a management that will allow for mistakes. So, in my profession, if I made a mistake, I had to be able to go to my chief and say, I did it. I did my surveillance detection the way I was trained. Here's exactly what I did. So I document all the steps I took. And this was my conclusion. This is why I arrived at that conclusion. I was wrong. And the chief's going to say, thank you very much. You have a nice day.
Okay.
Because that's all he can really say. Now, again, if I have that problem repeatedly, that's a different discussion. And so you have to, as I said, as we've discussed, you have to allow people to make mistakes.
Mm.
If you don't, they will never reach their full potential.
Okay, absolutely. And we can apply that same logic to business as well.
Absolutely.
I guess, would it be good company has good training within their business? You give people the structure to lead and to work with, and you give them, I guess, that autonomy, that initiative to do their job, be themselves. And if they make good, if something doesn't check out the way they want it to, as long as they've gone by a training manual, whatever that looks like, then really we should be gracious enough not to take a dim view.
Because the employee should be able to document everything that he did. And it should be consistent with whatever the company policies and procedures are. And if they're doing that and they have outcome A or outcome B, that's the outcome that the company put in place.
Okay, that makes sense. When you were doing your operation and you were out in the field, were you having to do them in a way that, in the moment, on occasions, you would have to go through your checklist in the moment, and then either act or don't act based on any level of detection. And then once you've done that, you would have to were you able to write things down? So when you went back later in the day or whenever it was, and you had to write a report, that you had full recollection?
Was I able to? Yes. But typically I didn't need to, because going up to that point, it's pretty simple what the procedures you're going for. And everybody that I'm reporting to know we speak the same language. So we say, I did a surveillance detection run. We simply say I did an SDR and I had 3 stops and I had changes of time, distance, and direction. And in that entire time, I had no issues, detected no surveillance. So that phraseology may sound foreign to you,
Yeah.
but to the people I'm sending it to, just those 2 or 3 sentences, they're going to go, okay. Now, if there's a problem, I might have to go into more detail, but generally speaking, they're going to understand it.
Do you miss those days? Because to me, it sounds amazing when the terminology you use and the operational speak that you use. It just sounds like It sounds like, I guess, I thought it would, but it sounds amazing. Do you miss those days and the operations and everything else that you were engaged in?
I miss a couple of the people I used to work with. I had achieved high enough rank that I got to see enough politics that I don't miss the politics.
Okay.
Where I worked with some great people. That organization is full of fantastic, hardworking, smart people that show up every day, do their job every day. Doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or Republican, nobody cares. Nobody even knows. We don't talk about that because there's no reason to. Who cares? Let's get this operation done. So I was blessed to work with some fascinating people. Like I said, I stay in touch with a couple of my colleagues now, not very many, because that's not the nature of that business. But do I miss doing the showing up, working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5.5 days a week?
Wow.
Not so much.
Okay.
But do I miss some of the people? Yeah, I worked with some fabulous, fantastic, great people.
Okay. And so now, I've alluded to that you work with companies, you work with businesses, and you help them develop all different types of things. I guess it could be leadership, it could be operations. It'd be lovely to capture a little bit about how you're working with businesses and maybe how people can contact you to find out a little bit more about how maybe you can help them.
Yeah, well, businesses all suffer from the same shortcomings. They have to communicate, they have to entrust, they have to empower. And those are all things that they have to learn. And especially when you have a rapidly growing small business, how do they do that? how do they learn to trust people? Because this gentleman has invested his entire life savings and 20 years of his life into this company. How can he put a structure in place that promotes his people and empowers his people and protects his business? Because those sometimes can be contradictory. So that's what we spend a lot of time talking about and trying to help them develop those structures and those policies so that they can empower their people. Because I think there's nothing stronger than an employee that's empowered to make decisions and benefit from those decisions. And again, he's empowered to fail. I'm sure that not every client that is a guest rather that has been on your show has hit it out of the park or been 100% perfect. I'm going to guess you've had one or two that maybe they were having trouble hitting 50%. Okay, it happens. And you just accept it, you deal with it, you work with it, and you move on. And so the same thing goes with the businesses. They have to accept it and move on.
Yeah, that does happen. It happens with me. I don't always deliver as a host. So you have to don't take it too personally. And I think what is unique that we all have access to is awareness and that ability to actually think, actually, I wasn't that great there, or I used this word too much. That's a great opportunity to actually learn from and to develop from. And I'm sure when you go and work with businesses who probably can be a little bit tunnel visioned in terms of what they're doing. And sometimes, and it's not a, and it's not kind of something that they're doing deliberately, but sometimes people can't see the wood for the trees. So
Right.
when you come in, I'm sure you're able to remove all that haze, give them clarity. And I love the word that you've used a number of times in this conversation is empower. So I think when we empower people, magic happens.
Yes, sir. I can't say anything better than that. When you empower things, magic happens.
Absolutely. I'm conscious of time. So where would be the best place for people to contact you?
My website is Jeffrey S as in Scott Sanow. So JEFFREYSSANOW.com is my website. They can go there and they'll be able to reach me. They can go to my agent, who is, I can't think of what her website is now, ucaa.co. ucaa.co is Connie Phelps, and she is my agent. That's an easier for people to remember. Or just Google me, Jeffrey Sanow, and I'll come
Okay.
up.
Okay. And I'll put everything on the show notes anyway, so people can just click the links and they can get in contact with you, and hopefully people will benefit from working with Jeffrey.
I would look
And
forward to that.
and last two questions. One is, I'm in the UK, you're in the US. So do you work with people in person and remote?
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
perfect. Perfect. Okay, so that's one question done. And the last question is, it's the recurring question. So if you could invite three inspirational people for dinner, they can be alive or past, who might you invite?
I love that question. So, number one person would be Marco Polo. Why Marco Polo? Well, I read the book The Journeyer, which is a fabulous book. I can't think of the author's name, but it's a fabulous book about Marco Polo's adventures going from Italy, Venice, I believe, to China, spending years in China, then coming back home. And so he's my hero because I've traveled much of the world, not quite the same way he did, but I would love to sit with him and have a whatever they were drinking back, an Italian wine or whatever they were drinking, and talk about some of his adventures. The second person would be Neil Armstrong. Talk about an explorer.
Yeah.
He walked on the moon, for crying out loud. What greater explorer is there than that? What did he go through? Imagine the stresses. People have died trying to get to the moon. So imagine what was going on in his head and how did he cope? That would be a fascinating conversation. And then the other one, this goes back to my modesty, Sean Connery. As an actor, I like him. I've always liked him. Obviously, he played James Bond, and I would just be interested to hear how he made up the parts of the role. I know it's television. Trust me,
Yeah.
I know what I did has nothing to do with what he did. And yet he was still very successful as an actor in that role, as well as others, but in that role. So those would be the three I'd love to have dinner with.
Yeah, that would be a fascinating dinner, and it'd be really interesting to, if that happened, what themes would be discussed? Would it be acting? Would it be leadership? Would it be traveling? Would it be going to the moon? Would it be would it be operational stuff? There could be so many different things that would come out in that dinner. The mind boggles. It could be something totally different, totally random. Jeffrey, gone over time, but thank you for your time. It's been pure pleasure meeting you. I love what you do. I've researched your content, so I've been following you online. So I'll put some links on so everybody else can delve into more of your content. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow this show. So please do, if you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button, and your feedback is very welcome. So we're keen to hear about things you like and equally things you don't like. So you can find me at Paul at myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the contact page on the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.